And welcome in as we are going to recap week 3 here, Friday night drive here in Shaw Local. Glad you're with us here. Matt Rodewald, Steve Soucie, we're back with you early in the week as we kind of turn the page on week 3 to go to week 4, but also kind of get the one last look and throw some flowers their way. How was your weekend, sir? Did you get a chance to rest and reset and recharge?
A little bit. It's just one of those situations where you're just always trying to cultivate as much of that information from the weekend as you can. I mean, Saturday is catching up on 200 games on Friday as best I can, so that's always an interesting challenge. But we just kind of went through that, and Saturday was, I guess, a little thin for games. I think of
consequence.
Marquee value.
We'll go with that.
So it was like when you look at so Saturday was a little light on that front. So keeping track of a couple of the games that I was interested in, but other than that, it was just cultivating and trying to make sure that I didn't miss anything real interesting in terms of who maybe pulled off a mild upset. But I thought it was basically a week where we made the progress we kind of expected to make progress. There weren't a lot of things that I felt were like really earth-shattering that happened in week 3.
I never like to admit this sort of thing, but as you and I were doing the show on Friday for week 3, I felt about 15 minutes till 11 o'clock that I was kind of done. Because in the sense of like the results were kind of like, in terms of, impact around the state. Am I wrong when thinking that? Because I felt like that was the case.
Well, that, and I felt like there was a combination of games that got done fairly quickly.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of like games that were battling back and forth that were like a discussion point. Even going further on that point, I think I got score entry done faster than I've ever got it done in my life.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah.
So it was. I mean, I was off shortly after midnight. I wasn't around that much longer either because everything was coming in. There weren't a lot of things where I went, I got to check that. That doesn't seem right. I mean, there just wasn't a lot of. I didn't have to go to secondary sources to verify scores because it was like, no, that's pretty much what I expected. I mean, there was only a handful of games where I was like, oh, that's interesting. Got to go check out what happened there later on. But as far as like confirming the results and finding something that just seemed completely out of whack, there really wasn't a lot of that happening in week 3.
That means that this week's going to be absolutely bonkers. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it sure looks like it. I mean, I think the schedule itself definitely looks like there's a lot of games out there. I think there's 16 games that are pairing 3-0 teams, another 12 or 14 that I thought the 3-0 team was playing a really good 2-1. So there's 30 games right there, right off the rip, that I think before we even dig in deep, that I think are all very, very interesting, which leads for, yes, probably a very chaotic week.
Yeah. When you get to all these 3-0 teams, and we got a whole boatload of lists of 3-0 teams that we haven't seen in years, decades in some case, and we are going to go down them one by one. So we want to, salute you guys that get to 3-0 that haven't been there in quite some time. And I want to talk about that a little bit, maybe impact-wise, on the playoff selection as you sort of like, try and sort them out a little bit. I want to just kind of just a wide view, wide lens. These teams that are 3-0 that you and I are going to talk about, there's a path to the playoffs for some of them, but for others, it gets a little tricky. Is that kind of messing with how you kind of simulate things here at this point?
Yeah, it becomes very difficult with some of these upstart teams that you're not used to having some success and counterbalancing it with maybe a few programs that you're used to having success that are not this year. So then you have to kind of play a little bit of the bend on both sides. Are they as good as they've shown in the first 3 games? Is this team that maybe has gotten off to a rough start with a very difficult schedule, are they still better than that team that maybe has benefited from maybe kind of a soft schedule? So that becomes a real balancing act, especially at this point in the season, because we have some data points. We still don't have as many as we would like in this situation. There aren't a lot of situations where you look at a week 4 game and you go, okay, I can look at comparative results between maybe 2 or 3 of their opponents and say, okay, this is how they did against them. Because that's how I usually do it with coin flip games. But right now, I don't have those data points to lean on. I can't really look at comparative opponents because a lot of schools don't have them yet. So when we get there, I mean, but like when we're week 4, week 5, and you've got some of these teams that have jumped out of the gates a lot quicker than they have in the past, You kind of have to really kind of dig into them and go, is this for real or a blip because of the schedule? Or there's a lot of different factors that you kind of have to look into with those schools that don't have the track record of having success, because you can get burnt like trying to project out and go, oh yeah, they're winning, they're moving along, and they're doing that, because sometimes there's schedule issues. Sometimes you can look at a schedule and go, that's a 3-0 that's pretty legitimate, and there are a few of those there that's the case. But there are some others where you look at that schedule and you go, you know what? I'm not really all that surprised that they're 3-0 based on who they played so far. So it is really kind of a tricky proposition sometimes to figure those things out, especially at this stage of the year.
So we'll do that dance with a handful of teams here in these next few minutes or so. And if you want to read about these teams, make sure you go read Sousie's column from What We Learned in Week 3, shawlocal.com. All right, so the first one I have up is, we talked about this a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Let's hear it for the Romeoville Spartans. 3-0 for the first time since 1995. I was a sophomore? No, I was a freshman. No, wait a minute. I was a sophomore in high school at that time. The last time they were 3-0, which means it's been a really long time since they were at that mark. What do you make of what you've seen from them in just terms of their schedule and the fact that they haven't been in the playoffs in 12 years and have a legit path to get there?
Yeah, this has been a team that over the last couple of years, even going back to the COVID year, I felt like they were making some progress. Last year did not get into playoffs, finished 4-5. But if you look back at their schedule last year, there were a couple of games early in the year that they just narrowly lost in the non-conference schedule. And you're like, I think that was probably going to come back to bite them. And in reality, it did. And then you noticed immediately this year, it's basically the same situation, same teams that they played before, didn't have any trouble in the non-conference schedule. Won both of those games, got to 2-0 quickly, got into conference play, picked up a win right there. They're at 3-0. We've talked about this before. The Southwest Prairie, pretty divided in terms of top teams and bottom teams. And for Romeoville, they're on the side of there where they can make some hay in their regular division play, as long as they can kind of keep this momentum going. I mean, I think, honestly, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could potentially end up with 7 or 8 wins. I mean,
easily.
That's what I think the back half of their schedule provides an opportunity for them to do. It's a fascinating little, quirk in the schedule this week. They have a crossover game this week. They have a crossover game against an 0-3 team from the other division. So that might give us a little bit of reading the tea leaves type of situation. If Romeo was able to finish off a team from the other division, get to 4-0, even if it is an 0-3 team from the other side, the teams from Romeoville's side of the division do not beat teams from the crossover. I think if you look at it, they might have 1 or 2 wins over the past 4 years in those crossover games. I mean, as a group, they just don't beat the other side division teams very often.
We've seen this for the years that you and I have talked, as well as just hosting this show, but you and I have known each other for a good 15, 20 years. When we've talked about these things where it's like, okay, they go to 3-0. Well, that race to 5 becomes different for certain teams, where it's, we can get to 5, but what else can we get? It's the idea of, well, can we get to 6? Can we get a home game in round 1? Can we win the league? Like, that's where you start to see that, and you can see Romeoville's progression is starting to kind of take that step to that next level of like, oh, I think we have 5 wins on this schedule. What else can we get on this? And I'll give it, that's product to the coaching staff. That's product to whatever. I don't know how many kids they have on that roster, but I'll say at least 60 guys. 60 guys who probably spent the winter in the weight room, dedicating themselves after going 4-5, getting this close. And you see these teams all the time. They get 4-5, or in the past, we've seen 5-4 and not invited. And they just say, this is enough, and they get to the next step, and then they stay there for a while. Romeoville feels like that, even though we haven't seen what they've played yet, but that's just kind of where that projection could go if all things work out for them.
It's probably not 60 to begin with. That's the first thing. I bet it's lower than that. But
I'm being generous by including the freshmen and the pro. I mean, just that. Yeah, but you're right.
One of the things about this program that I think I've noticed over the years is they tend to have a lot of underclassmen playing, and that group, was making some progress, and now some of those kids that have had a little bit of success, but not quite the level that they want to, they are backing that with 18, 20 varsity games under their belt as
That's
they
a lot.
right now, and there aren't a lot of people that have that kind of experience underneath them. I mean, I think their quarterback, Richard Connolly, is a kid that might have been starting regularly since he was a freshman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the kind of kid that, that is gaining from those experiences, win or lose, just has a lot of snaps, a lot of repetition, a lot of experience in seeing what varsity speed is, how to react to it, how to play to it. And I think that's what Romeoville is benefiting from a lot right now, is they've managed to keep some of those kids invested in the program, despite the fact that they were completely overwhelmed maybe getting the snaps that they did when they were freshmen and sophomore.
Sure.
And now they've kind of grown into themselves.
Eventually it does work out. I mean, it doesn't work out for everyone, but it's working out for Romeoville, and he's also got a guy he can throw to in Winfield that's really helped. So having that connection there makes a big difference. We're going to come back to that league and the other team that we were going to talk about down the road here. But first, let's go to Oak Lawn, because we have not spent any time in the Spartans. Oak Lawn, and what is it with the Spartan nickname? Oak Lawn now 3-0. Last time they've been in the postseason was 2009. It's been 16 years since the green and white have done something significant in November. How about them at 3-0 so far?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, about like how I do what I do. And, I'll be honest, I stack conferences, at the beginning of the year, and it takes a lot to convince me that I'm wrong. Like I'll have to be,
because of the strength of the league that you perceive it to be. Yeah,
just what history tells me.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
what the patterns are with these teams, and Oak Lawn is a team that I thought I had a pretty good handle on what the pattern is here. I mean, 3 straight consecutive years of 1-8s, a lot of games where they weren't competitive, even in games where it looks like they might have been able to be. So to see them at 3-0 now they're a very tricky team moving forward to figure out how to evaluate, because in the past, that's just a given. You just look at the board, you're like, everybody in their conference, you're like, they're going to have a hard time competing in most of those games, especially the playoff-bound teams. Now it's a discussion in your mind. Can they make the leap? Can they go up and compete with the more dominant teams in their conference over time? And I don't know if we know the answer to that yet, but it's interesting now that we have to at least have that discussion, because in the past we wouldn't have to.
Yeah, you've got 2 games for them upcoming with 0-3 teams, Argo being the last one before Evergreen Park comes to your building, and then Richards comes to your building. So you get those two at home, which helps. It's a big help for sure, but you got to get to 5 when you can, because the back end's pretty loaded for them. And then, when you think about that record, was it 0-19? Or I'm saying 0-9 the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think they had 1 win last year. I'm not sure about that.
Maybe I'll have to pull that up for sure. And I have it in front of me, so I'm going to pull it up in a second. But I did do the last 4 years of math, and it's 2-34 in the last 4 years. Yeah. So to go 3-0 is remarkable. I don't care who you are, right, but the feeling in that building. And I know there's a lot of construction in that building right now. They're doing all sorts of renovation. I'm sure it's a big referendum project, but there's construction everywhere. And there's the one big long hallway that goes forever. And I don't know if they have a champions walk in that hall, but I would imagine a division winning or conference champion walk in Oak Lawn would be pretty awesome hallway to walk. That's for sure.
Well, they won in a buzzer beater in week 3. And that was an interesting sign, because in the first 2 weeks, despite the fact that they haven't had any success, they outscored their opponents like 99-6 in the first 2 weeks of the season. So not only did they indicate to themselves, yes, we can beat somebody pretty good, but we can also win a close game. So that's a really great sign for them moving forward.
Let's move way up north, because this is a team I'm shocked by this, and I know that the conference is tough. That's why I'm shocked by this, at least for them. The Zeebies of Zion Benton. I don't know what it's like up there on a Friday night. I've never been to a football game there. I don't have the slightest clue. But the last time they're 3-24 the last 3 years, and they're 3-0 now.
Yeah, I mean, that we were talking earlier about where I have to go sometimes to check scores to confirm that they're accurate. I'm not going to lie, I've done that twice this year with Zion Benton. I was like, really? Are we sure? So yeah, and like now I guess I got to start taking it as kind of just the way it is now, because definitely the first couple of those I was just like, that's interesting, and then they just keep coming. So I don't know if it's sustainable, and this is one of those teams. This is definitely one of those teams that you talk about, okay, 3-0 out of the box, competition hasn't been that strong. Can you make the transition to the better half of that conference? I don't know the answer to that right now. I'm still trying to figure that out. So, 5 might be possible. It's not going to be super easy.
I don't know where they get the 5th win. And when I look at the schedule, though, let's keep in mind that every team they played on their schedule so far has won a game. These are not winless teams. So, I mean, good for you, North Chicago. Good for you, Rich Township, and my friends in Mundelein. But, hey, when ZB comes up and takes all of them out, impressive. They go to Lake Forest this week. You're going to find out real quick if they're going to compete in games or not. Let's just put it that way, because after that it gets much tougher with Warren, Lake Zurich, Libertyville, and Stevenson. Week 9 sits Waukegan. And so you need something here, and I think your best shot might be Lake Forest. It might be Libertyville, but I don't know. Getting to that 5th win is going to be hard.
One out of those 5, and I think that's going to be hard to do. I'm just being completely honest with you. So, kudos to getting them to this point, and I'm not saying it can't be done, but those 5 games, as far as bridging a gap, that's about as difficult as it can get for someone in that situation.
It sure is. So let me talk from a playoff standpoint here. Okay, 4-5. Looking at this league, pretty good non-conference schedules for these guys. I mean, that's the beauty of playing a Warren. That's the beauty of playing, a Lake Forest and Lake Zurich. They're going to go get wins more often than not. You have North Chicago, Rich Township that have actually won games. Can they do anything in their league to bolster the points? Where does 4-5 have to be for the ZBs to find a way to the path, to the dance, if they can back in at 4-5, if that's the way that goes?
They would need a ton of help.
They would need a lot? Okay.
From those non-conference teams. They would need those non-conference teams to produce at the very least a playoff level to get in, because you'd need 10 to 12 points from those non-conference games, because like every week in their conference that they're in, if they're losing those games, they're getting 4 from their conference opponents. They need that to get up into the 5-6 a week average.
Yeah,
that falls on North Chicago.
Man,
a 4-win team that gets in, you're going to need 50 points.
Yeah, and
you're going to need an average of 5.5 points a week. So in order to do that, you need your non-conference teams to basically win a ton of games.
I wanted to do this exercise because of the idea of 4-5. It's not that simple. And now you understand that you really need to rely on those non-conference teams, and you need to play good teams so that they can continue to go in afterwards and help you along the way. We're going to get more into this here as we've gone through a couple teams. We're going to take a timeout. I got 2 more 3-0 teams that are surprises to us, so to speak, and then ones that I don't have on my list. Maybe you got more for me as well. And then we're going to continue to break down the rest of the state as best we can, as we always do, recapping Week 3 here Friday Night Drive on Shaw Local.
I'm State Representative Steve Reich. Since 2017, I've led the fight to reform our child welfare system and supported educational choice for every kid in Illinois. I've worked to stop the collapse of our public pensions while standing up for businesses that are being crushed by crippling mandates. And I've never forgotten who pays the bill. The work isn't finished, and as I run for re-election, I'm asking for your support. I'm Steve Reich, and I approve this message.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brenton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike. With dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starve Rock Country, we meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart? It's our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
And welcome back as we continue to recap Week 3 here on Friday Night Drive. Matt Rodewald, Steve Soucie with you here. And we're talking about 3-0 teams. One of the teams not on my list there, Souce, was Bishop Mack because, they're 3-0. They're good this year, and it's not too much of a surprise, but okay, they're pretty good. But the city of Kankakee, 2 teams combined to 127 points this weekend in 2 games. So Kankakee, the K's got a big win, and Bishop Mack, it was a big win. And it was a lot of touchdowns being scored in Kankakee this weekend for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely, a good situation. Like you said, Bishop McNamara a little bit coming back on the radar again. Last couple of years, they have not been a playoff team. It's been discouraging for them. I think they're a player in the Chicagoland Christian. I think for Kankakee, it was maybe taken a little out of the frustration of the first 2 weeks of their schedule.
You're not kidding.
Everett and Lincoln Way East doing what they did to them in Week 2. Maybe Kankakee was finally like, do we remember how to score? Oh, yeah, this is how we do it. Oh, yeah, that's fun. Let's do it again. So, yeah, it was definitely one of those situations where I think it was like, well, we finally have the opportunity to kind of have some success and enjoy it. So kind of got, I guess, a combination thing right there where it was a situation, taking out some frustrations and remembering, oh, yeah, we are pretty good at this. We can still do this.
I'm being told that they just scored another touchdown.
Yeah.
It's 75-6 in that game for sure. And you mentioned Lincoln Way East. We'll get to them in just a minute here, but I want to continue down our path of 3-0s that are a bit of surprise. This is a fun one here because this is a great football town. This is a great football community, and they've been starving for success up there for a long time. The Blue Streaks of Woodstock are 3-0 for the first time, I believe, since they haven't had a winning season since 2009. It's been a long time for them. What does it mean to have a 3-0 team in Woodstock right now?
Well, I'll tell you a little story about this one from the off season. In the spring, the Woodstock athletic director contacted me and said, "We just had our Week 1 game fall through. Who's available in Week 1 that you know of?" And he said, I'm going to be honest. It might not be very easy to find somebody that we can be competitive with. That's what we're looking for. We haven't been to the playoffs since 2009. And I'm like, and my reaction to that email as I was reading it was,
wait, what?
Really? I'm like, I actually had to look it up to make sure he wasn't fabricating something for me. That just didn't seem right. So it was like, and I remember Woodstock teams being feared, like from, early in my tenure. Starting, doing this for a while, but it did not wash with me. It did not seem like that was right, that it was.
Let me add context to this real quick, because we had state championship teams from Woodstock, 80s and 90s, without having it all in front of me. Don't forget, Marion Central Catholic, also really good in the same stretch. Yes. Both of those teams in town, in that little town, really good at football. You drive into Woodstock, you see signs right away. And things change in towns. It happens all the time. And then you have expansion as well. Woodstock North comes in. And we've seen them have some good teams. And you wonder, well, is that where the football talent goes? Did they split and the football talent just kind of got frayed from the scene? That happens too. But it's nice to see a traditional team like this put it together like this. There's a lot coming for them, but there you go. And so you saw that email and you're like, what, 2009? 16 years?
Yeah, that was my first reaction to it. I mean, fortunately, I was able to find them an opponent that worked for them, and they were able to get a little bit of momentum going, and they've carried that through. This is another one of those situations, though. Let's be honest. The schedule has not been very daunting to this point, but you got to beat who's in front of you, and that's what they've done. And now we get to find out whether or not if they're climbing up a few rungs in that league. This should be a situation where we'll find out pretty quickly, too.
And so this brings us back to the ongoing theme, of course, throughout the season, that we should stop having these individual conversations and we should have a scheduling open house with the Souce. Come by, bring your schedule. We'll bring you someone else's schedule and we will match you up. We got to make this happen now. If you're just getting flat out direct emails from athletic directors, right?
Yeah, that happens often, and it's just like I said, it's like I'm like, do we have? There probably should be a more efficient way to doing this than having me send them my updated spreadsheet list.
And Susie's got 2 cell phones going, hang on a second. I got Woodstock at line 1. You want them? Sure? Yeah. Okay. They'll play you. You got to go there. No, you don't want to go there? They want you at home for the first time around. All right, they'll do a 4-year deal. No, 2-year deal? Fine. Okay. And click. And it's done. We can just skip all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we got to figure out the location of this open house. It needs to be centrally located area, but maybe kind of hinting northern, just so that. Yeah. How about the Illinois Valley? Nobody ever loves the Illinois Valley. We'll just go do it. You know what? We'll do it at the LaSalle Peru Stadium. I've never been there. Now I have a reason to do it. We'll just have it.
Yeah, let's do that. Yep.
Everybody in the stands, and they get to come see that beautiful facility and go, wow, we should play a game here. Yes, you should. You should do that.
And then considering that LaSalle Peru plays the same team twice in a regular season, maybe bringing all of those teams there will open up some scheduling opportunities for the Cavaliers.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they play each other once, but I don't need to see them play twice, and I'm sure they're tired of playing each other twice, to be honest with you. They've done it for the last, 4 years or so? Since COVID, really, they've kept going at it. And Ottawa and LaSalle Peru, one of the oldest rivalries in the state, as you know, but you throw the numbers are going to be skewed. It's like, well, this is a 185th meeting between the two teams. Why? Well, they met 3 times a year for the last 6 years, so that's why. If they don't let them meet in the postseason, if they ever get there together, that'd be a problem too. Well, I love seeing Woodstock, but Woodstock's got some scheduling challenges ahead here, so that's going to be tricky for them to try and get to that 5-win mark. Can they get to 5? Even though, let's just wipe the next 2 weeks off the map. Can they get to 5 after that?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but it's once again, it's one of those situations where how far have they climbed? I'm not sure yet, and that's the thing. You got a resurgent Marengo team this week. That will be a good measuring stick. But that'll be a fun building. The next couple of weeks are difficult. Marengo, Richmond, Burton after that. But then you have opportunities. Plano, Sandwich. Those are games that you rise up.
Should be able to win if you're a serious team.
You get those, and then you've got the rivalry game with Woodstock North at the end of the season. Johnsburg before that. So the back half of that schedule, there's some opportunities there. I'm not saying they're obvious wins, but there are chances that if you play good football, you might be able to get a W. Been interesting the last couple of years watching the Kishwaukee River. I have no idea where it's going to go week to week. It's just very strange to see that conference. And it used to be Richmond, Burton, and everybody else, and I kind of like it this way, where Richmond, Burton is good, but everyone else is competing too, and it just kind of makes that league tougher. Ultimately, when you get leagues like that, you make deep runs in the postseason. So work with your conference mates because that's how it works. Yep, absolutely. So, all right, let's move on. Let's move on down back to the Southwest Prairie because Plainfield East, 3-0. They've never won a playoff game. I wrote that down and was like, they've never won one playoff game? But no, they haven't. And they've been in business now for, I want to say, a good 20 years as a school. All those Plainfields feel fairly new to people our age, but they're not, to be honest with you. They've been around a little while here. So what do you make of Plainfield East? 55 points every time. Sammy Hagar likes it. It's interesting what's going on there. I didn't really know what to expect when this program has had a lot of coaching changes over the. I think they're on their. I think this might be their 4th coach in the last 6 years. Yeah, they've had a few. They've turned over some coaches. Got a new guy in there, a young guy who's got some energy and has got in the building. One of those situations where maybe in the past they've had situations where they didn't have, they had someone outside of the general building running the program. That can be a big factor when you're trying to rebuild a program. That face, that person there, that contact point for those kids, that he's constantly there saying, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to build. Plainfield East also not really a strong schedule to start the season. However, like we were talking about with Romeoville, that is a wide open division. And if Plainfield East goes in there with a lot of momentum, there are definitely 2 wins in there for them to get to 5. I think there's very little doubt in my mind that there's at very least the opportunity for them to get to 5, maybe 6. But that's
right.
It's the road, the path is there for them.
The path is there, and that's the key. And we've talked about 55. Why does that matter? Because Argo 55-2, De La Salle 55-0, and Joliet Central 55-6. So we're on our path to having a team score the exact same number of points all season long. Last year, Lincoln Way East got as close as they could to getting the 41 all year long, or 42 the whole year, and then I think one game was 41. I think that's what screwed it up for all of us. But this week is Yorkville, so you're going to find out a lot about both teams, to be honest with you, because both of them come in at 3-0. Both of them, I'm not sure both of them should be 3-0 in some sense because of the way that they played, and I don't know if they're going to. Neither team, I think, at this point is going to run the table, but you're going to find out whether they belong in the upper echelon and hang with the Oswego's of the world, or if Minooka's your best win and you're going to bow out in the first round. That's kind of where I'm looking at with a team like Yorkville. I think Plainfield East has the same trajectory here. Say they come out of this with a loss, they got 2 0-3 teams waiting for them, so they have a chance to get in and then go get aggressive for more, as you said.
Yeah, and that's the situation right now. You still don't quite know. I think Yorkville's a very defensive-minded team. Obviously, Plainfield East has had a lot of offensive success. It's one of those rock and hard place type of situations. Whose strength is going to weigh out here? I would lean towards believing it's probably going to be Yorkville. Their strength leans out, but that's what makes these a little bit more interesting than maybe they have been in the past. With some of these teams on that one side that has struggled, kind of showing a little spark here. So, how much of a spark is it?
This is fun.
Are we going to really start something here? Are they going to be more competitive in those games? Maybe even get a few wins in some of these games? That's what I'm really looking forward to in some of these crossovers, because in the past, they have not been competitive. So that's kind of where, when you look at the history of it, you just kind of go, well, it's crossover week. It's going to be all W's for one side and all L's for the other.
Right.
That's not me being negative. That's just the way it's been.
That's usually how it goes, history speaking to you here. But obviously these kids don't care about history when you're 16 or 17 years old. But at the same time, that's just kind of, that's what we can lean on for you and I, for us old grown folks here, for sure. Let's talk about the Lincoln Ways. Combined 9-0. Perfect season if they were one school, but not quite. Lincoln Way East at 3-0. West at 3-0, Central at 3-0, Lincoln Way North does not exist, but they haven't lost either. It's an impressive start for all 3 of these teams, and I like the idea you wrote today about having like a Lincoln Way Cup. Like, what would this cup look like if we could figure out like a traveling trophy of some sort, something to do with Frankfurt or New Lenox, or the new Frankfurt trophy? Can we just like combine the two? I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you just kind of look at it and you say, well, why don't they play? And there's a lot of reasons for that. Lincoln Way East is a little bit old school. They've had a lot of success, and they've intermittently played some back when the Southwest Suburban Conference was a little bit bigger, and but they've almost never been in the same divisions with one another.
Right.
And like I mentioned in today's column, I mean, the conference that they're currently in is effectively imploding next year. So we're going back to the old Southwest Suburban. I don't know if they're going to call it that again or what they're going to do, but that's essentially going to be their conference. So the 9 remaining teams from when Bolingbrook departed a couple of years ago, those 9 teams that are former Southwest Suburban teams that are now in the Southwest Valley are going to go back to being the 9 teams together. So you're going to have conference games, with 8 opponents and then 1 non-con game that you have to fill. And that's basically what they're going to do. So they're going to play everybody. So on next year's schedule, Lincoln Way East, Lincoln Way West, Lincoln Way Central will all play one another. 5-10 years ago, I would have said, okay, that's a real bad thing for Lincoln Way West and Lincoln Way Central.
Of course.
And I'm not saying that Lincoln Way East still wouldn't be favored moving forward in those games, but I think the gap is a lot closer now.
It sure is, yeah.
Than in a while. And that's even with how loaded Lincoln Way East currently is. I just think that both Lincoln Way West and Lincoln Way Central have laid down very nice foundations, and I don't think the success ratio is going anywhere for either one of them anytime soon.
Look, I giggle about the idea of Lincoln Way North, but my favorite Lincoln Way crossover game was Lincoln Way West, Lincoln Way North 2015 in a driving rainstorm with both of those schools were 8-0 and in 5A. That was one of the best environments I've ever seen. And it was a shame what happened in North, but also keep in mind Lincoln Way West, all that enrollment had been split. So now once they got some of that back from North's closing, it jumped up a notch back to 7A, which is why you're seeing them in 7A. For a while, they were in 5A and doing really, really well. So it's interesting to see the trajectory of where Lincoln Way West has kind of done this along the way. And then I always felt like Central was the one school that never was able to fully recover from the split 25 years ago, 30 years ago, of the 3 and 4 schools they had down there in Lincoln Way. And from a football perspective, I think this might be the first time you've seen that, and you hope they can sustain it, because if they can, that's a lot of good football in that area, and that's wonderful for the community for sure. So that'd be great. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of those things about Lincoln Way Central and what they've been able to do over the last couple of years, I think you got to give a lot of credit, and he doesn't want to take any of it. But to their head coach Dave Woodburn, he's from the Lincoln Way East coaching tree, came over there and has kind of rebuilt that program. And he'll readily admit he's stealing a lot of things that they utilized in that Lincoln Way East program.
Of course,
it's working there too. And like I said, he doesn't
want the same kids. He
doesn't want to take a lot of credit for it. But there's a different mentality in that program now. They don't consider themselves to be, the step cousin over on the side. They consider themselves to be capable of winning against anybody that they play against. And so far this season, they have shown out. They have done a really, really nice job. I think that non-conference win over Providence was a huge indicator of what this
sure
team
was.
is of. And like I said, I think it's kind of a three-headed monster in their division with Lincoln Way West. We're going to get some clarity there, and then you throw Bradley Bourbonnais in the mix. But all 3 of those teams, I think, are really, really good, and I'm interested to see how those games play out later on this year.
I want to go back to the conference shuffle in just a second, but before I do that, playoff scenarios. And East is in 8A. We know that, but we've never really seen Central. Where do they fall? Are they 7 or 8?
Central's a clear 7.
The clear 7, and West is a 7.
And so is West.
Okay,
Yeah, so they're both kind of factoring into that mix. The interesting thing, at least of teams we're just mentioning there, Bradley seems to be sliding to 6, which is a very interesting little development too.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in a while too. So okay, we'll get to that too, and kind of lean on some of the playoff. The doors where they're sliding open and closing for the coming teams in the coming weeks for sure. But the Southwest Valley, okay, so they go back to being 9 teams. Is there a 10th team that could come in with them and close the door on the schedule and make the basketball/volleyball schedules a little easier to do than 9? Because it's much more difficult as an athletic director with 9 teams than it is 10. Do you see a 10th candidate out there?
Yeah, I really don't. And I think if you had one, please let them know. Because I mean that they are, it's just their enrollment fit is just not something that's really good there for a lot of schools that are kind of sitting in there. I mean, they've made overtures to some schools and asked them if they might be interested, but it's a hard sell when you're talking about some of those programs that are in that conference. Not only in a football sell, but I mean there are some real good teams in there. But unless you're ready to make that step and you're big enough to do it, it's kind of a tough sell, to be honest with you, to get someone in there.
That's the only school in that conference that I think about with Manuka, just as making the. But again, you have to look at the geographical footprint too. And you go north, you don't see a lot. I mean, the 2 schools that you'd want, well, they just went over to the Southwest Prairie, Romeoville and Bolingbrook. Yeah. So this is going to be interesting to see where that falls. Let me ask you about the old DuPage Valley schools, the 6 schools there. What happens to them now?
I've heard nothing but rumors at this point in time. There is supposedly an arrangement that is in the offing between them and another conference to fill those kind of non-conference games, similar to what the Central Suburban and Mid Suburban does, where they kind of cross over and trade those non-conference games over. Yeah. I do not know the identity of that conference, to be
well. I'm wondering if it's the Western Big Six because of what we've seen with Sycamore played Moline and Canelan went to Rock Island, so there's a couple of those possibilities there for sure. Let me slide in another 3-0 team in there because we haven't talked about United Township. East Moline. They're 3-0. That I don't know what to make of that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back in history and look at 8-10 years ago, I mean, this was a program that was not only losing, but I mean, they were getting beaten badly almost every week. And they've slowly started that climb back. And now I look at where they're at and what they have left on that schedule, and I'm like, this is definitely a playoff team. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. And now it's becoming a discussion of, is it a 6-win team? Is it a 7-win team? You know, will they be able to throw punches with Quincy and Moline later in the season? I mean, I don't know the answer to that just yet, but I do think that right now, I think they're probably the third best team in that conference. So, and that's a huge step forward for that team.
What are other teams that have stood out to you that have made your projections a mess, hard to read, hard to understand, or just the 3-0 teams that you're kind of going, oh, that's fun, good for you guys?
Well, I think more so, I mean, I'm not really going to answer that question. I'm going to spin it in a different direction.
Of course.
The thing that's been more confusing to me right now is looking at the 0-3s. The list of 0-3s this year are teams that I am simply just not used to seeing there. And I'm trying to figure out, can they turn this around? Because it's very difficult to turn that around. You got to think about this from the perspective of, just to meet the basic qualifying standing, those 0-3s have to go 5-1 the rest of the way. And some of them have absolutely brutal schedules. Just to get to the 5-win mark, they have to go 5-1 the rest of the way.
I've got some for you, yeah.
But there are some swinging heavy hitters on that list of 0-3s.
I got some for you.
Are they done? That's what's being the most possible thing. That's the most difficult thing for me right now to ascertain.
All right, so I got 3 that are 0-3 right now because it's a nice clean number here. You've got JCA, you know that, Joliet Catholic, 0-3. The last time they haven't made the playoffs, 2 years in a row, 2016, 2017. You and I alluded to that. That was sort of the end of the Dan Sharp era, and they had to transition, and then COVID happened, and Jaws got it going again, and no surprise, they're back in it. But because of the schedule, here they are at 0-3. Edwardsville, last time they missed the playoffs was 2010. It's been 15 years since they missed the playoffs. That's a long time for a program that, if you're, let's say if you're in my region, you're St. Charles North, you're Batavia, guess what? And your name comes up on selection Saturday night, and you're going to Edwardsville. Oh, that's a long drive. And so that's
a big problem, too, for them. They still haven't played East St. Louis.
They haven't played St. Louis yet.
They end the season with a good team out of St. Louis in Week 9.
There's a lot of teams up, yeah. And there's a lot of teams up north that are basically looking at that going, boy, if they don't get in, that's a good thing for us from a travel standpoint. Makes it a lot easier, and because you're fearing the brackets. And the reason I say this is because this is where people stare at your projections every week and they go, where's that downstate team that I don't want to travel to? Yeah. How close am I going to have to deal with that? First round, second round, maybe not at all. Who knows? I got one more team I want to throw at you here, Naperville Central. We talked about them. But here's a stat I found. The last time they had a season with less than 4 wins was 1979. Before I was born, they went 3-6. They haven't done that since. And I don't know what's on their schedule, but I know Lincoln Way East is on it. Yeah. And so they're 0-3 right now, and they're staring down the barrel of you-know-what and wondering, what's happening with us? That's got to be demoralizing for a team to go from the quarterfinals the way they did last year to go to 0-3. I don't even know what to think.
And it's the same thing that, like we were talking about, it just makes it very difficult to figure out, like especially this early in the season, do they have the capability to kind of come back and get back in this mix? Your mind tells you yes, they do, because it's a situation where Naperville Central, they're always there. Mm-hmm. They find a way to get there. So you're looking at it from a logical standpoint, saying, okay, I pretty much got to figure out a way that they're going to get there because they always do. And then you're looking at the paperwork, and it's like, I don't know if that path is there. I don't know if that path is there right now for them.
I know they have Naperville North left on their schedule, and I know that's at least Week 9. I'm trying to pull it up real quick just so I can have that for a quick discussion point, because I wonder what their schedule really has in store for them. Again, it's a tough road they've had so far with Oswego, Hinsdale Central, and the 5-3 banger we saw against Sandburg over the weekend. But they go to Neuqua Valley. They got Lincoln Way East after that. They got Lockport on the road. And then after that, you get Mattia, Homewood, and then Naperville North at home. So they're not doing the neutral site. Naperville North comes to your building. Usually, that for years they play this at North Central College. That kind of went by the wayside the last couple of years. But so there's a path to 5, but boy, they got to play really good football to get there. And I don't know if they can at this point.
Let's circle back for a second too and talk about what we were talking about before. When you think about their non-conference games, what's the collective record of the first 3 teams that they played on?
Really darn good.
8-1.
Yeah, so it's not the number.
That's the kind of team that you want to start talking about a potential candidate for 4 wins, enough playoff points, because Oswego is going to keep winning. I think Hinsdale Central is going to win enough to definitely make it worth your time. So from your non-conference schedule, if you're getting 14 or 15 points, that is a wonderful start towards being one of those teams that could be in play if we need 4-win teams.
If you can do things the right way for the Red Hawks, your last 2 games of the regular season, weeks 8 and 9, both in your building. So that's key. And you still have homecoming to go with Lincoln Way East at least, but that's tough at all. But from a juice standpoint, it's there to be sold, at least from a coaching standpoint. So we'll see how it works out. I can know that Mike Ulrich has a lot on his plate for that. As we wind things down here, want to shout out Morris, 3-0. I mean, that was a big win to go down to Peoria and get that win on a Saturday for sure. RB, Richmond Burton, I love the Joe Larson stat. 4 interceptions on defense. Is it a state record? Not even close.
Yeah, that was the one that got me. When I saw that note on Saturday morning, I was like, I wonder what that record is. And then I looked it up, and I was like, man, he barely makes the top 10. I'm like, are you kidding me?
6. And this is where I'm like, okay, you see that guy in the white jersey? Don't throw it to him. Stop throwing it to Joe Larson. Please don't do it more.
Yeah.
Dudley Crown put 56 on the board. We were waxing poetic about how they were putting a running clock on Crystal Lake Central. They hadn't done 56 points since 2018 when they lost to Prairie Ridge. I'm sorry, they lost to Prairie Ridge 70-55 in that game. I don't know how long that game took, but I'm sure there's Joe Stevenson out there watching this going, oh, yeah, I have that scorecard right now. I can tell you how long that went.
Yeah.
That's
probably
a
in the
long
file
time.
cabinet at Joe's house.
Let's talk about the final team here before we go here. I'm going to save Central Rockets for last at 3-0 here because this week's big for them with Prairie Ridge coming in at 3-0. And Central Rockets, their defense has allowed 19 points. Their schedule is what it is in some sense because of the closed conference. You can't get a good read on this program, but I'm really impressed with what their defense is doing. They went into Algonquin and got a win against Jacobs for the first time. And let me ask you this, Suze, from just the wide view here. For a team like Central from Burlington to go into this conference 6 years ago, now they're competing pretty good. What does that say about either the conference, or do you just see that as, well, enrollment changes, which means schools and programs change sometimes?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be completely honest with you. You look at what they've been able to do and kind of how that progression has come, and it hasn't come overnight. It's been slow and steady. And I recall a couple of years ago, when I was persistently picking them down in the bottom half of the conference, some of the student body let me know that they didn't really appreciate that with some creative memes. I enjoyed, but now I almost missed that a little bit because now I started moving them up the chain, so I don't get the creative commentary on how stupid I am. So it's basically I missed that a little bit, to be completely honest with you. But I haven't told you this, but here's a little sneak peek to what's coming along in this week's projection. All right. The new projection is coming out on Wednesday. The Rockets have a very low number by their name.
Very low.
Very low number.
Low number.
But yeah, it's a single digit that stands directly up,
towards the top. I'm going to make note of that for sure.
Yeah,
that'll be good to see. And as I've said on this podcast before, full disclosure, as an administrator at that school district here, that means a lot of work for some of my colleagues here, hosting a soccer regional, volleyball regional, and potentially a lot of football playoff games as well. It's like, hey, welcome to having a fall sports program that's robust. at the school district that has 5,200 kids now just west of Elgin. So how about that? So it's going to be a fabulous atmosphere. If you're going there, do not park on Plato Road. That's the only thing I can tell you. Just can't do that. County's going to say no. It's going to be bad. Don't park there. Park in a parking lot. So, Souce, we got to get you out there. How about that? At some point, we got to get you to a game.
Yeah,
get you on
I
the
would love to
bucket
do
hill.
that. Yep, absolutely.
So you get all the coverage of everything going on in week 4 and everything that's going on this week. Look for those projections as we go throughout the week as well. You and I will see each other Friday night for week number 4 at 9:30, and we'll do it then. How about it?
Sounds great. Looking
All
forward
right.
to it.
Take care, Souce. We'll do it again soon.